Okay, so as we start to get deeper into this process, we need to understand that in narrative writing, we can't really look at anything as being ordinary anymore. We need to look at the ordinary and figure out what makes it extraordinary. And really, everyone's life or experience is extraordinary in some way. What we need to look at is how we can take the ordinary, view the extraordinary within it, and make that a narrative story that we'd like to share. Here's a great quote from Mark Kramer, who is pretty legendary in literary journalism circles. This idea of even one piece of behavior changes the whole aspect. So instead of saying a new mall was approved after years of difficult legal struggle, which is something many of us have written countless times, think about writing, the gavel banged down, the crowd murmured, Attorney Jane Smith smiled, Attorney Harry Jackson frowned. Now you're starting to get a vision of what happened, what exactly transpired in front of this writer. And as he notes, it really doesn't take any longer to report this way. It just takes viewing the story in a different way. So this idea of immersion is something that we keep dwelling on because we need for you to understand what it means to pour yourself into this story and spend time infiltrating the story that you're going to be reporting. We have to really get a feel for what this story is going to be about. What's the history of it? Where did it come from? What led to this? What are some of the central core issues? What's the overarching impact both on the characters and what will be the impact on the readers? What are the conflicting forces that kind of go for and against? Where's it going? What's the future look like in this situation? These are all aspects of understanding our story, and we need to really be able to identify these and express them and quantify them in a way so that we see whether or not this is a story worth telling. Now, the characters are what will hold this together. There is no narrative without character. We need to see real people in real time to build a story around them. It's who the reader will establish a relationship with. But characters can be people, they can be places, they can be things, they can be a moment. I mean, you can have personality in Conf, which is the community festival here in Columbus, has a personality to it. So, what we need to do is just to be able to identify and illustrate and show this character that represents our broader subject. Very specific in terms of showing our details to illustrate the story. And the writer has to be invisible. So although you're immersed and you're in it and you are depicting everything that's going on around us, let the reader feel like we're there. Make sure that you are not the key focus of the story. Again, we're going to look at this idea of timelines, organizing different lives and characters and how they intertwine with each other. We're going to use metaphor and simile and different aspects of language. We want to make sure that we are depicting very credible and plausible characters. We don't want to see someone for all their all the wonderful things that they have or all their faults. We want to see very real representations that let us kind of delve into their minds and delve into their lives, and if we can, to show ordinary people in relatively extraordinary circumstances. And we're going to anchor these things with key moments that will get us into the midst of the action. Then we're going to swoop away and we're going to go off into a different direction. It's not a question of immersing into one moment in time. It's looking at this one entity or one community or one person and seeing them over the course of time. So where do we put in our background information? Where do we show relevance? Where do we show a different proportion? How can we bring us into a moment, scale us back so that we see the context of the moment, dig us back in again? All of those things are going to come into play. And this is going to be a little bit about tension. I mean, that's kind of intrinsic to news anyway, right? We don't write about things that are boring, some people criticize that in news we don't write about really good news because it doesn't have as much tension to it. It doesn't pull people in. So in here, we're not necessarily looking and reporting on bad things, but we are trying to chronicle things that have a pull and a tug to them, something that's going to really hold on to the reader and hug them, if you will. It keeps readers compelled and really by bringing the human element into things, we're able to transform what might be kind of tedious topics and show them through the human struggle. So think about, the idea, if we write something about how a family might be struggling financially and how they may have difficulty, they're maybe just above or just below the poverty line. Those are numbers when we talk about the figures that represent the poverty line. But if we talk about, a mother who breaks ramen noodles in half so that she can, split it between her two children, and she goes hungry on her way to work at a fast food restaurant, or, the woman who leaves her work at a fast food restaurant and goes to the YWCA homeless shelter where her children will sleep that night, that gives us a very different representation, and that's really the story we're looking to tell. So let the characters show us their conflict. Let us show us their points of change, the complications that they go through, something that forces our characters to make choices, to exert some form of effort. But we have to avoid the cliches. So, we're not looking at a rather pedantic language, which is kind of what we all fall back on. We really have to scrape away the adjectives and scrape away the cliches that we've become familiar with, and even scrape away those kind of cliche stories. So, if you're thinking about, oh, I'm going to do the underdog team, well, the Bad News Bears did that, and they did it really well, although it was fiction. It was a great story. And the idea of adoptees searching for a mom, I mean, that story's been done to death. So why don't we try to look at something that has a little bit more depth to it, something that's a little bit more straightforward, that maybe hasn't been approached before, something that goes beyond the surface. And make sure that you are using your creative skills, but that they are absolutely being tempered by the journalistic skill that you've already built. So, we are accurate. You are still fact gatherers. We are still adhering to that journalistic core that we have built up from. We're not building composite characters. We're not changing names. We're not, manufacturing circumstances or putting a composite environment together. You have to experience what you report, and you have to report what you experience. And ultimately, if you do this, you're going to start to see stories in a different way. So here's an example from Tom French, another very talented immersion reporter. He talks about how after September 11th attacks, he went into a labor and delivery unit profiling a Muslim woman who was answering the phones at the front desk. And he asked her a lot of questions, but as he notes, it was only after he shut up and he just watched and listened that he got his best story. So in a way, that's my best advice to you, is just be there, be quiet. Be listening, be experiencing what's going on. Don't feel like you have to ask questions or pull out information. The information is around you. You just have to be able to see it.